to the for now, bi-weekly edition of Cognitive Dissidents. This is Hrvoje from Geopolitics and Empire.
I'm Mike from the Parallel Systems Broadcast and Parallel Mike Podcast.
This is Monica from the Monica Perez Show.
So we're experimenting here. We're going to try doing an episode every 2 weeks. Let us know whether you love it or hate it or are indifferent. And I guess some of the cool fun news was that we made it onto the Corbett report. And maybe I just real quick share that snippet. Let me see, pulling it up in the shared screen. You can see that, yeah?
Place right now.
Technically, Greenland is tectonically part of the Technate because NASA,
Yes.
Greenland is part of the North American tectonic plate. Funny. And then just my trends again. So anyways, what do you guys think about that? That was cool, no?
It was a very long segment, actually. I listened to the whole thing. Yeah, it was good. You laid it out.
I don't know much about the Corbett report. I live in a bubble, but I've heard of him, so that's probably something. And so, yeah, it was pretty cool. I appreciate it when anybody shares our stuff. I always think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Mike, you didn't know Corbett? Well, he's like one of the OGs from the mid-2000s who started this, right? All right. Well, I guess one of the first topics, I think the big news of this week was the past few weeks is the AI stuff. And there's a lot of material. I recently listened to Tristan, I think it's Harris, I forget his name, ex tech guy on Diary of a CEO. And I thought that was a must listen, watch podcast. And he's laying out a lot of the same themes that us have been looking at related to technocracy in a totalitarian world state that big tech is building. And let me just, to kick off, share a few segments here where, one of the big stories was first you had Matt. So there's two perspectives on this, right? That AI is taking over the hype, right? And so that's embodied by people like Matt Schumer, who's the CEO of these AI companies. So so it's clear we're gonna kind of have to parse through the noise. It's clear that these guys are hyping it up. There's a huge hype. It's not doing what they're telling us it is. So there definitely is a hype. They need us to subscribe to their AI platforms so that then we can help build it out, right? So that they can get money. So they're hyping it most definitely for financial reasons, for their transhumanist religion, ideological reasons. And so something big is happening. Is this article that he just posted, and he just said, ChatGPT cloud, it's so amazing, it's doing everything, you're all going to be replaced in a week, blah, blah, blah. And then there are people countering it. I'm going to show those clips in a second. I recently had on Will Spencer, and he wrote a great piece on the killer app is killer hype. And then at the bottom of it, he lists sources of people who are debunking the hype. And then there's this guy I just came across, Mo, who I think works in the tech space, and he did a 4-minute video explaining it's not doing the things. It's not ready, before just getting your thoughts, I want to just show a few clips. And this one was Brad Pitt fighting Tom Cruise, where they mentioned Jeffrey Epstein. And I do have to say, it looks like a scene that was filmed with actual Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise. So you can't deny. I think the truth is in the middle. So this stuff is powerful, these tools. So I'm just going to play these 15 seconds.
No, you killed Jeffrey Epstein, you animal! No, he was a good man!
He knew too much about our Russia operations. He had to die, and now you die too.
Now tell me, doesn't that look real?
That was pretty good.
And then we've got this one where it's these two women in their apartment, in their living room, and then AI fills in the rest, and it makes it look like they're floating in the middle of the ocean. I mean, it's wild. And so so you get more examples there. And then here's Musk saying it's basically, we're all going to be replaced.
Corporations that are purely AI and robotics will vastly outperform any corporations that have people in the loop. So you can think of, say, like computer used to be a job that humans had. you would go and get a job as a computer where you would do calculations. And they'd have like entire skyscrapers full of humans, like, 20, 30 floors of humans just doing calculations. Now that entire skyscraper of humans doing calculations can be replaced by a laptop with a spreadsheet. That spreadsheet can do vastly more calculations than an entire building full of human computers. So you can think about, okay, well, what if only some of the cells in your spreadsheet were calculated by humans? Actually, that would be much worse than if all of the cells in your spreadsheet were calculated by the computer. And so, really, what will happen is the pure AI, pure robotics corporations or collectives will far outperform any corporations that have humans in the loop. And this will happen very quickly.
And I'll just add one more. Andrew Yang, who was the presidential candidate who promotes technocracy, he wrote a must-read piece. And I don't curse, but when I'm quoting somebody, I have to quote them. He calls it the fucking, and that white-collar labor is quickly going to be replaced. And we are seeing unemployment numbers high. And just one more short clip from 60 Minutes where this guy talks about the AI slop apocalypse, which I can't agree more with this guy.
I mean, if you go into Amazon now limits the number of books that an author can publish on a daily basis to 3. So you can't publish more than 3 books in a single day. Clearly, they're not writing these books. These are AI-generated novels. And they go online and you sell them for $1 or whatever. So they can turn out this stuff, at an amazing level. Every time I publish a book, as soon as the book is published, there are 3 books that come out that there are companion books to my book that says, oh, you don't have to read Baldacci's book. We tell you everything that's in the book right here in a really summarized form. So you can read it in like 30 minutes instead of reading his novel. Every book I've written in the last 7 or 8 years, companion books come out on the same day. At some point, the sales are going to nosedive. The market's going to be flooded with these cheap AI-generated books. Publishers are going to start losing money. They're going to start shutting down. And all of a sudden, guess what? You don't have any really great writers emerging anymore. All you have is a vanilla AI stuff that is just a hodgepodge of stuff that other writers have already written. And that's not a world that I want to live in. I don't want to go to AI-generated movies or listen to AI-generated music that no human hand has even touched. It's just based on stuff that other people have already done. I mean, that's not the world that I don't think most of us want to live in. I certainly don't.
So stop there, and I'll add that I watched last night. Sometimes I just need to decompress from geopolitics and globalism. And I was listening to Joe Rogan with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, and I think it was a good episode, except for like the last half where they're talking about
That's
sports.
decompression. CIA propaganda is how you relax.
Well, yeah, but it was interesting discussion because they were talking about the film industry. So I like to learn about things away from geopolitics and globalism. But they were talking about AI, and you got to hand it. These people are very intelligent, like Affleck and Matt Damon, and you learn about their industry. And he was saying that AI cannot write a script, and it never will. And I think he's got a point because you need a human sort of intelligence, and it just cannot do some of that stuff. So, your guys' thoughts on this whole space here?
Yeah, I would just say with the whole AI thing, this idea of intelligence is really what's bamboozled people. Is the idea that artificial intelligence is going to be like human intelligence, when we know that what it actually is, these large language models, or LLMs as they call them, it's basically just like a really advanced search engine that's got great predictive capacity. So it's scouring all of its data that it's mined from the internet and then saying, well, what's the most logical sequence of letters or numbers that comes next? And that can be really useful in a technocracy. You could certainly have it automate certain jobs in healthcare and the legal profession, but you can't trust it. And that's the problem. You can't trust it because it doesn't have real intelligence. It can't reason. It can't think. It doesn't have the divine spark, the creative thoughts that we can have. And for that reason, it will never, ever be what they're promising it will be. It will always be an artificial, a parrot, basically, repeating what humans have already done and said. It's just a very sophisticated parrot. But of course, the narratives have to be so big for 2 reasons. One of them is to keep the Ponzi scheme going, because after 2008, they needed the next big thing that's going to change the world, and it's AI. And if people truly valued the AI space on what it's actually earning businesses, it would collapse the Ponzi scheme because it's not earning any businesses anything. Nobody's earning money off AI. They're actually spending more money just fixing the mistakes on it. And then there's this other whole occult transhuman narrative that it's going to take over the world and it's going to bring forth the Antichrist. It's like, no, it's not. It's literally not got intelligence. Obviously, if you're a psychopath, you might think maybe we can animate it with some spirit or soul. And some of those guys do think that. Some of these people in the tech space genuinely do have a religion where they believe you can animate technology. And that's the transhuman side. But again, I think there's no evidence that that would ever be possible. I think if you're a Christian, then it's ludicrous anyways that man could animate. Well, it's kind of like Frankenstein's monster, trying to animate a corpse or something like this. So I just think the whole thing is a scam. And I think we're going to see that revealed over the next few years. The only people that are going to retain this current narrative are the ones that like propaganda and listen to a lot of it. And so, yeah. Elon Musk and those guys will tell you it's going to take over the world, but there's zero evidence of it. It's actually failing in its objectives.
Okay. Well, I agree that it's not going to have human intelligence. I saw what you posted, Hrvoje, about the guy saying, yeah, it sucks. It's only loved by people who are bad coders in the beginning. And I think that it is going to do what it's going to get better at doing what it does, which is the curation and aggregation function of searching. And in that way, it generates images and music and stuff, and it can generate slideshows, and that's great. And it's totally manageable and controllable, and it will be like a level up on productivity and everything. But if you look at what Musk said, like, could you imagine if a skyscraper full of accountants and pencil pushers could be done by one spreadsheet? And that's what happened. And that is actually what happened. Like, you can do that with a spreadsheet right now. And guess what? Just like with seamstresses and washing machines, the number of people employed using those technologies is much greater than when those technologies were invented. So I don't think that it as a tool is going to be a real threat to all industry overall. That's the other thing, is they want you to think it's all industry. But some industries, yes. Some job titles, yes. I don't think it's overblown in what it's going to do as far as getting better at what it does now, though. I agree that the problem with real creativity is, and I think I was on Union of the Unwanted, there was a woman there, I think she was a doctor of some kind, and she talks about this, that what you like about a music or like an art or whatever is what I'm going to apply the Japanese term wabi-sabi to that. Like, there's something a little bit imperfect about it that resonates with your like soul or the analog nature of your own brain. And that's why it can never really have that spark, the divine spark that's in something created by a human being with a divine spark. So I agree, you're not going to get to that spot. And I think The Matrix tells that perfectly. Like, we tried to give you the perfect world, but you couldn't accept it. I also think that the idea that human beings will no longer be necessary when jobs can be done by AI, that goes to a book I'm reading actually on my show called Our Enemy the State by Albert J. Nock, where he says, like, we are going to have problems as long as people think of a job as something to be given, that taking labor and capital and applying it to resources is something that you have a right to do, a God-given right. So the real problem would be if we no longer have access to land, full ownership of land, and like that tokenization issue, that would be a big problem. Or if they so completely control the weather that you can't use the land to grow food. So that's really the problem, is that the alternative to having a job that AI could take is being self-sufficient or parallel. And that's where we should be focusing on what are the alternatives. And two more things. I think that the hype is meant to super high charge all the investment to create a bubble, to really build it out at taxpayers' expense, at dumb money's expense. Just the way, if you watch the documentary Das Netz, Stuart Brand, I think it was, who said, the biggest impact of the 60s was that we got all these people to contribute free their coding. They created computing free by crowdsourcing it among the youth. And I think that's what these bubbles are for. Yes, they're going to lose money, but you'll have the tech. So all the people might go bankrupt, but you'll have it. And that's what they're doing, and it will burst. And then the last thing I will say is, and this goes to Mike's second point, there's a pattern where they will tell us whether it's a COVID or the COVID vaccine or chemtrails or I don't know what other, I have other examples, but there are trillions of invisible monsters everywhere trying to kill us all. And thinking that AI is in your computer ready to leap out and eat your brain is scary. And they like that. And that's one of the agenda items. But I think that's so those are my thoughts based on your thoughts.
They were great thoughts. I just wanted to add something. I'm just going to share my screen for a second, if you don't mind. This was a chart from the Financial Times, but it's data that's been put out everywhere. And it says that if you exclude healthcare employment, the US has actually lost jobs since 2024, and it's actually a staggering amount. Now, just going back to the AI thing, I would have thought that AI would have been most useful in healthcare and education. Those are the kind of spaces where you would expect jobs to be lost because of AI, because of this supposed fantastic technology. But actually, it's not. Those places are hiring more people. The places that are losing jobs right now, it's mining and logging, wholesale trade, retail trade, information, all non-healthcare jobs, professional and business services, manufacturing. So essentially, this AI narrative is also being used to cover up the massive destruction of the US economy. They're saying, oh, AI is taking the jobs. It's like, nah, it's not AI taking the mining and logging jobs and the manufacturing jobs. So I think it's another way to use this narrative as a weapon to discombobulate the masses.
I think that's part of why they're deporting people is that we don't have the jobs.
I was going to add to your final point, Monica, that precisely that they're using all of these scares to build world government. And so, again, it's like nuclear war threat. I mentioned it previously, Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, right? Nuclear war. We need world government to keep us safe. Pandemic. We need world government to keep us safe. AI. We need world government to keep us safe. So.
Yeah, that's straight out of the report from Iron Mountain. You need a global threat, and we're not going to talk about what we're using because we're going to use it.
Well, one thing I have noticed is the quality of the AI that they're giving to people to use has diminished substantially over the last year. So I used ChatGPT around a year ago. I was exploring it. I was asking it all kinds of crazy questions to see its limits. And now it's practically unusable, even at the paid level. It's absolute garbage. So they've turned down the quality. And I think it's because they realized they gave too much too soon. So it's like, oh, crap, we've got nowhere to go. We've given them all of the goods. And
interesting.
now they're scaling it back and giving you a crapper version.
Because, Hrvoje, I also noticed this. There were numerous articles about how bad chat bots are or whatever. And this one woman was led down the garden path. She told she was going to meet her soulmate on a beach. Like all these big articles saying how they were devastated and hurt. Kids committed suicide based on bad chatbot, companionship or whatever. And to me, like their arguments that this was rogue or out of control seemed implausible, but there is definitely they're either making excuses for why it stinks or why they're going to pull back on it or limit it. But yeah, there's something going on with that.
Like I said, the only people getting rich off AI are the Substack writers using it to write their articles, and there's a lot.
Well, I think the businesses are that the AI action plan and the AI executive orders and Japan now putting a bunch of money into energy and all the subsidies that go into government research, university research, energy programs, nuclear programs, world politics, foreign affairs that are all subsidized the cost of energy. All of this stuff makes that product so much cheaper to deliver that these guys at the very top continue to get richer and richer, even if the product itself fails.
Yeah, I think maybe as well as a humanity, we might actually want it to fail because the likely reason that they want AI is because they're going to use it once they kill off a lot of the people. They think, oh, we're going to get AI in there to do all the jobs for us. And that's probably a key part of it. So they really want it to succeed. It will help them. It ain't going to help us that much.
And I guess I'll just say one important point that I've been talking about for a while, for months now. Gamers Nexus is a great source. I love the work that they do. And I had on recently Brian McLean, my former colleague at TNT Radio, who's a tech guy, and that was a great episode, where they're trying to remove compute from us, desktop computers, laptops, and he explained that they just want us to end up with an edge device. I didn't even know what that was. So basically, like a device that you can't control, just a simple device for login, instead of like your smartphone, where you can configure your smartphone, you can de-Google it, you can install sideload, you can use alternative Play stores, or your laptop, you can install Linux, and your desk. You can have agency, you can have control. And now they're pricing us out of the hardware market. This is coming, and Bezos has said this, where you won't own a computer. You'll just have a simple, crappy device. You log in, and then it'll take you to the cloud, where the compute is removed from you to the cloud that they completely control, and you can only do whatever they allow you to. You see this now, the shape of things to come with like Windows 11, Microsoft Word, and Windows 11 defaults to saving to the cloud,
Yes, that
not on your
recently happened.
device.
I did not like that. That's why I use that stuff, is because it didn't do that.
Right, and then it's all subscription models. So you now you can buy your computer and have everything self-hosted on
Yeah, it has
in-house.
no memory.
You don't need a subscription. But then once you can't afford a computer, or there's no more parts, you have to have a subscription for everything. And so I've been meeting my next project. I didn't realize my desktop was 5 years old, and I need a new one to upgrade. And I put together the parts that I would need to buy. And for example, the SSD that I was looking at, it was $500 a month ago. It was then 750, and now it's close to $1,000. Luckily, I mean, I found way cheaper alternatives. But and then some of the stuff that I was going to buy, it's already sold out. You can't get it. And then this week, Seagate and Western Digital announced they are sold out for 2026 for hard drives. And it's all going to the data centers. And so I think that's just another avenue. They're taking away our cars. They're taking away your ability to fly.
Homes.
To make money, homes, and now compute. And so I thought that was just important to add. And then I just got an email this morning from Martin Erdman again, and he's doing really great work on this. And he's talking about, let me just share my screen for a second. Again, here we go. So his newsletter, he's talking about Francis Bacon, and I just downloaded Bacon's New Atlantis, which I'm going to read. But he says Francis Bacon, in the 16th century, 17th century, in New Atlantis, he predicted that technocracy would rule the world in the future. In an article from last year, influential tech experts Peter Thiel and Sam Wolf referred to Bacon's utopian work and confirmed that modern man believes in scientific progress. This belief has replaced the earlier understanding of humanity's destiny. Even then, Bacon warned that unrestricted technological mastery would come at the expense of morality. Thiel and Wolf do not see the problem as being with science itself, nor do they reject technological progress. Both Bacon and the experts see the solution in redefining salvation. While Christianity regards salvation as a divine process transcending history, they shifted entirely into the realm of human control. And it's kind of what Mike was talking about. This is their technotronic transhumanist religion. So it's about replacing God. And then just to add on that, Musk recently said X money will be the source of all transactions. And a great account I follow called Babylon Singularity says no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark. And so I've been thinking, getting digital ID is not yet per se technically mark of the beast, because it's just like I've been likening it to the Roman census takers, right? It's like the biometric or digital form of it's taking information from you. You're not getting a physical mark or implant yet. But then if you see this being built, Musk is saying, X is going to be where all the money is, and then you need a smartphone and a digital ID, and then he's working on Neuralink, whether it's going to be the Neuralink per se, or some other variation of an implant, then you can kind of see where everything is, then all of these parts are consolidated into one infrastructure, where at some point you may not be able to have access to your X money unless you use the implant device, right? And so then we really get to you can't buy or sell unless you have this. Mark, any thoughts here?
I was wondering if Mike had thoughts about how that ties into stablecoin and private money. And if you had something else to say, Mike, don't skip it for me. But I was curious to see if this ties into that.
Yeah, it feels to me like this is the American way of installing the beast system, is to do everything through private companies, which is it's been their model forever. So they get the private companies to expand it with government contracts. And I think I mentioned last week that last year, something like 70% of all of Palantir's money came from the government. And so they get the private company to do things that they couldn't get through the US government or the Senate. It would be blocked. And then, of course, eventually it gets consumed by the government anyway. So Elon doing his X money, it'll probably just be another experiment. But at some point, maybe they'll co-opt it and link it up to everything else. And there will be, there's going to have to at some point be either a single currency that the US adopts that everyone has to use, or it will be a whole basket of them. They can say, oh, you can have any one you want, but the whole structure is controlled by the US. So it might be that you can go to your digital wallet and you can use Xcoin, you can use Stablecoin, oh, you can even use the Bitcoin, but the whole system is surveillable and transparent to them on the blockchain. And all of the wallets can be controlled, transactions can be halted, reversed, and surveilled. So ultimately, you'll get to the beast system very quickly. I think we're going to see it. Whereas in Europe, it's a little different. It's all going through the centralized level. So they're going for CBDCs, and it's like overtly, yeah, we're going to control your money. The US, because of your constitution and this history and legacy of liberty, they have to trick the masses through the private sector. So I'm not surprised
genius.
Elon's on board.
It's genius to make it seem like a libertarian, decentralized, this private-public partnership. I've been arguing with libertarians for years. That's not libertarianism. That's the government doing these things without accountability or transparency, and vastly enriching private people who are sucking off the government, who won't be under the scrutiny, at least if it's through the government and you have a politician who's never worked in the private sector that's worth billions of dollars, which we do have, or I would say pretty close to that. There should be some scrutiny, but yeah, the private way is worse.
But this is where Europe actually has an advantage, because our bureaucracy is so massive and it's so slow to get anything through that even though they're going the centralized CBDC route, it's taking forever. They just can't get anything through. It has to be voted on, and it takes decades to do anything. In the US, because of the private sector, you've already got to the point where stable coins are being used, and that is your CBDC Lite. And this year, that's just going to expand massively. So it's so much more efficient to give it to the private market. I say keep the European bureaucracy. Let them do the CBDC. Yeah. Because they're going to screw it up. It's going to take too long, and it will implode probably before we get there.
The concept of government efficiency is anathema to any good constitutionalist.
On those notes, should we segue into sort of, because it's still related to tokenization, Bitcoin, and Epstein stuff, and then get Mike's thoughts as well. I just want to share, again, for the people viewing, there's just some funny visuals to share. And I loved Aaron Day's new banner, Bitcoin Jesus. And it's Jeffrey
That's excellent.
Jeffrey Epstein with long hair.
That's so blasphemous. You can't.
It's blasphemous from Max Kaiser. Max Kaiser, who was, he was basically these people who are saying, Bitcoin is better than like the Bible and Jesus. But here Aaron Day is poking fun of all of those people who believe Bitcoin is salvation.
I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to try to make that argument to St. Peter. No, you don't understand. I was.
But Aaron Day is poking
it
fun
wasn't really blasphemous.
No, because these Bitcoiners think it's our salvation, yes, and here Aaron Day is pointing out, well, Epstein was financing it, and here is your true Bitcoin, Jesus, which is a false, prophet, and then someone made this photo. It's the White House decked out in Epstein Island, in blue and white, which is hilarious. And then you've got this. Here's a quick clip from Massey talking about it's the Epstein administration.
Donald Trump told us that even though, he had dinner with these kinds of people in New York City and West Palm Beach, that he would be transparent, but he's not. He's still in with the Epstein class. This is the Epstein administration.
And then, this was crazy. On one of the masks on the wall on Epstein Island, dentist torture room is a mask that looks exactly like Howard Lutnick. This is really going far off. I don't even want to say it. It's just so grotesque. I won't even mention it. But you on Substack notes, Monica, you shared that we were right again. And I guess this is a physical. You still read physical newspapers?
And I write on them and everything.
And it says it's an article that says when the Epstein levee breaks, Representative Hanna sees the scandal as a way to wash an entire leadership generation out to sea. And then, a few days ago, I was on a podcast with Patrick Wood, and Jeffrey Peel's podcast was the host. And I was basically, because I know Patrick Wood, he kind of likes to let things settle and marinate for a while before giving his conclusion. And I've been outright saying this is the Epstein thing is it's all about algocracy, technocracy, which Patrick Wood for decades has been saying that they need to remove human politicians. And then a day or two after that podcast, Patrick Wood wrote a great article on technocracy.news saying exactly that. And then we have now mainstream papers talking about this. So.
Yeah, I found a really great thread on Twitter. It was by a woman called Diana Wallace, and she was listing all of the connections between Epstein and Bitcoin, just going back to what you were saying. And it goes all the way back to the very beginning, right back to basically it starts with the first person removed from the supposed originator, Satoshi. So Gavin Andreessen, he was second in command and first in command after Satoshi disappeared. He was the guy that immediately said, hey, Bitcoin community, I'm going to go to the CIA's conference to give a speech on Bitcoin as to why it's so important and the intelligence network should know about it. So these were the kind of discerning people that were running the space back in 2011. And literally that was the point when Jeffrey Epstein started to co-opt the entire system. And by the time you got to 2015, he was funding 3 of the 5 core developers, which if you think about it as a democracy, those 3 would have had the ruling vote on any decision. And over 75% of Bitcoin's code came after Jeffrey Epstein started controlling the core developers. So who knows what's going on with that Bitcoin code? I don't know, but I certainly don't trust it. And the rest of it, he was one of the seed investors for Coinbase. So he was one of the guys who was literally owning a key part of the company through one of his shell companies. And I think Whitney Webb did a lot of work on his relationship with Brock Pierce, who was key in the development of cryptos too. So one thing I just wanted to point out is clearly Jeffrey Epstein, he was being used to help expand the beast system, the mark of the beast system all along. That was one of his key roles, was to help install that thing. And probably to blackmail most of the early Bitcoin developers too, to ensure that they gave whoever you want to say was behind it, full access to the code. And he either did it through money, bribed them with money, or he blackmailed them probably. So I think you've got to think that whole space, whatever it is, it's going to be a key contributor to the technocracy and the enslavement system. Monica, I'll hand it to you. You got your hand up.
Just had a few things about the Epstein, like the agenda of wiping people out. And I don't know this stuff. The crypto stuff is beyond me. I know that those guys, it runs deep, and it sounds like using it, if Epstein was involved, it could easily be to set it up as a surveillance thing. As I never understood why. I know you can make it anonymous, but also the blockchain is like the most traceable thing. Nothing disappears there, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's part of that surveillance network. But just a couple of things about wiping out this like upper level management, or they're not managers, they're big money guys. So there's just a few names. I don't know everybody. I just jotted down a few names that came up in the news. Tom Pritzker, Larry Summers, Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, Kathy Rumler from Goldman Sachs. That was a big one. McSweeney is the UK guy. Jack Lang, Prince Andrew, no longer Prince Andrew. Joanna Rubinstein, Kimball Musk, Musk's brother, resigned from Burning Man. And a lot of these people were being taken out or resigning or whatever, not for involving themselves with Epstein at all, but for not cutting ties with him after his first conviction, which really had not a lot of press. You really don't know. It was a minor, it was compared to what he actually did, it was a minor charge. So there's two things I'm taking away from this. One is that these people did not cancel their friend. So if you don't follow the crowd, you will be eaten by it. Like so whoever on high is telling you this person is no good, everyone, it's kind of like when you're at West Point. If you see somebody cheating, you have to tell on them, or it's like you're cheating. You can take out people with just a snap of your fingers, not that they did anything wrong, but that they are associating with someone who is off, is no longer okay. And then the other thing is, I feel really started to gel for me that this is a MeToo 2.0. I remember the hashtag MeToo thing. Like, what is the point of that? And what it did was it cleared out boardrooms and put in underqualified women. And I mean, they were underqualified just because if you all of a sudden make every single new board member a woman in a world that has more men than women in it, you're going to have perforce eliminated at least, half the people who are really qualified. And what does that do? It really consolidates power with the chairman. So if you've got now, instead of 10 guys who know what they're talking about, 10 women who are happy to be there, that chairman now has a lot of centralized power. This would be the 2.0 in that a lot of these people have a lot of money and power, say, influence, whatever. You're neutralizing them from an influence point of view. Maybe they resign. If you resign, you have a big contract, money on the line. Sometimes all that stuff's not vested. Like, it could really be taking some big mouths off the table. The way, like, when there's a financial crash, when I was in banking, they fired all the directors and the VPs. The managing directors stayed on and the grunts stayed on, but taking out all that expensive, high-level stuff like the bourgeoisie and the French Revolution can help this trend of consolidating money and power at the very, very top.
Yeah. And any other thoughts there? And I think we have to be careful with Epstein stuff. People are sending me like Michael Tracy. I'm not a fan of Michael Tracy. He's almost sounding like an apologist for Epstein, but he makes some good points. And I use this philosophy, whether we're criticizing our own alt media or anything, where I like David Hughes's thing, where the three camps, like it's a spectrum: camp 1, camp 2, camp 3. So I do not doubt that in the whole Epstein story, there were crazy people doing insane things. But I also don't doubt that there were people who were just simply invited to some party and had no idea, right? And then, as you pointed out, if they didn't do anything wrong, immoral, but they just went on the plane or they went to a party organized by Epstein, and that alone is enough to blackmail them. As you said, they can just be. I love the scene. Mission Impossible, the original with Tom Cruise, was one of my favorite movies ever because I was a fan of the TV show. I imagine
Me
as a
too.
kid,
Me too.
I was like a really young kid watching like the 80s, 70s Mission Impossible, and Brian De Palma, who was the director of that film, he was the only one. That was the only good Mission Impossible movie because it had that really dark, deep espionage feel. But there was a scene in there where Ethan Hawke is Tom, the character of Mission Impossible. No, it's not Ethan Hunt. I always get that. Ethan
I was going
Hunt.
to say Ethan Hawke was an actor.
Ethan Hunt was the name of the
Yes,
character,
right.
and then because he was being scapegoated, they arrested Ethan Hunt's parents. And then the main, CNN, they've got Ethan Hunt's parents arrested and saying they did all these bad things, which they absolutely didn't do. So it's kind of like what they can do with Epstein. People today, they can say this politician or whatever did that. War. Do we want to move on to war?
I want to just ask one quick question. Do either of you guys have any idea what that $400 million ballroom at the White House really is? Is it like the future brain of world control? Because it's not an empty room with 1,000 chairs in it.
Yeah, Dre Dossier. I
saw that. I tried to see if she would come on my show, but yeah, that was good. Yeah.
Did she respond or no response?
No, but I just like DM'd her on Substack, so maybe she didn't see it.
Yeah, but I think she's the best on point. She's explained it all. Yeah, it's definitely like underground data center bunker.
Yeah, just because if you think, just logically, I like to sometimes sanity check, what would a $400 million house look like? What would that be? I mean, you could shoot to the moon on that, there's hardly any in the whole world that you could spend like $500 million on a home, and it's highly, like, it's got a lot of electronics, let's just say.
War then? Yeah?
Yeah, go
Just
for it.
real quick, this was a tweet the other day from Khamenei. The Americans constantly say that they've sent a warship toward Iran. Of course, a warship is a dangerous piece of military hardware. However, more dangerous than that warship is the weapon that can send that warship to the bottom of the sea. They closed the Strait of Hormuz, I think, for the first time ever. I'm not sure, not completely. They were doing a war game. Iran was, and then the latest is that there are these war games with, or was it Russia, Iran, and China doing joint exercises in the Strait of Hormuz. We have to be careful with a lot of this. A lot of the multipolar tweets don't have sources, and they intentionally misrepresent, because I know they do it intentionally because they never repent or unshare their material. But stuff is going on right now in the Strait of Hormuz, and there's a lot of talk from the West and the East about its shutdown. Some are saying it would blow up in Iran's face because they would suffer economically. But it's part of that. It's a military tactic as well. So you see who's going to be hurt more, the West or the East. How many punches can you take? That's the Rocky mentality, right? And so there's all this chatter now about the Strait of Hormuz, and if anything is going to happen. Philip Pilkington says it's really starting to look like the U.S. is going to launch a large-scale air campaign against Iran, and the Iranians have stated that they will shut down the Straits of Hormuz. And so, but this is kind of like a perfect. You guys see how they always have psyops to take us from one to the other. COVID, and then, forget COVID, now it's Epstein, and then forget Epstein, now it's Iran, and then, cyber attack Iran, and then these are all great pretexts for covering over the financial collapse, whether they can blame it on AI. Some people are saying with the financial collapse, they'll say it was AI, or they'll say it was Iran, or this or that. And so let me just finish out these other articles and then get your thoughts, because then now there's talk of civil war in France, right? Civil war looming, migrants killing Frenchmen. In UK, here's a short clip about civil war in UK. Of course, we have the American Civil War narrative.
No government, either the government now or no prospective government of the UK, has the guts to stop it. If they want to take strong action to prevent the Islamification of the UK, then it's going to mean big trouble for them. They don't want trouble. They look 4 years ahead. They will kick the can down the road to somebody else. And I think the end result of that is very likely to be civil war in Britain, where the indigenous
physical civil war.
Actual civil. I'm not talking about the American Civil War.
No.
Armies. I'm talking about something more like Northern Ireland, but on a much more intensive scale, where you have the indigenous British and the immigrant, some of the immigrant population, and the British government all on three different sides fighting against each other. And if I'd be very surprised if that doesn't happen, because there's no prospect of the government, any government today, stopping this from occurring.
So all of that, and then Cuba, of course, Trump just said he's going to force regime change in Cuba. It's going to collapse on itself. And so one of my subscribers sent on the Telegram saying some big YouTuber who did a 10-minute video on Cuba is done, it's collapsing. I'm like, oh, great, wonderful. Like over 1 year ago, before anyone was talking about Cuba, I'm like, Cuba is collapsing. Before anyone but now it's easier to come out, a big YouTuber, and say, oh, Cuba is collapsing. Listen to me. I'm like, okay, whatever. But anyways, I think they're going to pull the trigger soon on Iran. And Brad Miller, who I had on recently, he posited what's the purpose. And yeah, oil and all that, but I think the biggest purpose is the EU-like Middle Eastern Union. They want to get that done. And I have sources going back a decade, Council on Foreign Relations, saying, we want a Middle Eastern Union like the European Union. And of course, it's going to be a technate. So anyways, your guys' thoughts on the looming war.
Yeah, I think it's a really good one to cover up the economic collapse. As I said earlier, US is absolutely going down the pan in terms of the jobs numbers. They've revised them down again by, I think it's like another million just disappeared off what they said they had. And you need an excuse for that. And I think was just the logical one because they can blame it on Iran and then they can use it as justification to print a shit ton of, sorry, I know I don't like swearing, a ton of money. So I think that's probably the likely move. And I know that the repo market has been spiked again. So there's liquidity issues. It's kind of like in 2019 when there was all of those liquidity problems going into 2020. And then, of course, the crisis came along to justify the massive increase in dollars. So I think we're going to see that again this year. And so probably the next few months, if they're going to do it, it's an ideal time to get the ball moving on that. And they've still got 2 years of the Trump presidency to go. So if you're going to make some massive, terrible decisions, now's the time to do it.
A couple of things. The civil war in France idea that last summer I was traveling around Europe and I had a friend who was also traveling around Europe. She said, "Oh, let's meet in the south of France. It'll be fun, whatever." She had everything planned out. She got there a day before and she called me and said, "Do not come. It is dangerous. It is what I forget what town she was in, but like the news, the research she did not tell her it was a really bad place. Her car got broken into, all of her stuff got stolen like overnight or within an hour of her getting there, something crazy like that. I'm not generalizing, but I'm saying like the US, our problems with immigration, crime, enforcement, everything is really well advertised around the world. But I'm not sure that, and even in the UK, but we don't get the news about how bad it can be in France. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's at the same and a par with the US and the UK. As far as the Cuba thing, it's funny that you said a year ago you saw it collapsing, and now Trump's like, we don't even need to do anything. It'll just fall on its own. Because maybe it's like the way, if you've ever seen the charts of a disease like where smallpox or polio, it's totally on the way to being eradicated. And when it's on a steep downward slope, they introduce the vax when it's very clear where it's headed. So you could easily, if it really was collapsing already, it would be a great time to act like, for Trump to take credit for it. But I also think that doing things like an oil embargo or food embargo or whatever that Iranians are starving, Cubans are starving, supposedly, those are they're definitely acts of war. Nobody ever talks about the Gaza blockade. Like what happened, even if October 7th wasn't a false flag, they were blockaded for decades. That's just an act of war. And it's a cowardly one, in my opinion. And it gets very little credit in the media as a extremely provocative. It's a provocation to absolute violence. So I do not like that we're responsible for this kind of stuff. And it also goes to what Hrvoje has been saying about it's intentional to make the world interrelated so that you cannot function without trade. And part of that is not only that we're going to globalize and all of that, but it also gives you a tremendous amount of power over these smaller countries, which we've been beating them on the head to do free trade for decades, if not centuries, and convincing them that comparative advantage rules the day. But being able to feed yourself, now it seems more than ever, you should remember as a country or an individual that that's a very important thing to be able to do. And my last thing was, I wonder if the loss of Syria, Putin's loss of Syria, like Assad's loss of Syria, Putin was on his side, and now Putin has met with that awful, awful U.S. puppet twice already, and like, oh, we can totally make friends with Syria. If that was just such a critical turning point in the world unfolding, that once he realized he couldn't keep Syria, then he can't defend Putin, Russia. There cannot be any defense in the Western Hemisphere against the things that the U.S., the puppet masters, not Trump, he's not a person, whatever. He's a person, not a ruler. But the puppet masters want that they are going to get what they want now. And I think maybe that Syria thing was the turning point.
Well, to get Mike's thought, you just made me think. I mean, this was the other big story this week, Bloomberg, that Putin pitches Trump dollar goodies, and bargain over Ukraine. Well, the article shifted, but basically the Kremlin is making a deal, something to the tune that they're going to use. It says Kremlin floats dollar return, and I'm like, that's not very multipolarity, is it?
I just don't believe it. Russia has spent so long de-dollarizing and reducing dependence on the US. They had their reserves confiscated by the US and they was blocked out the SWIFT. There is no way that they would now trust the US again by going back to a dollar settlement. So I don't know where the narratives come from, if it's just confusion to keep the story going, but there is no way. They're so far down the other path now. And if anything, the rest of the world is moving away from the dollar because of what they did to Russia. So it's already kind of triggered the tidal wave out of the dollar. But just whilst we're on the subject of war as well, Hrvoje, I wanted to mention what happened in Japan recently. So people will know that the current prime minister, she did a snap general election to try and increase her majority, and she got it, the super majority she needs. Now, you need, I think it's 80% approval to change the constitution in Japan, and she already announced that she wants to change the constitution, and it's going to be around defense, because since the end of World War II, Japan hasn't been able to build a military. It's very heavily controlled because of what the US had put into their constitution after that. So that's probably going to get scrapped now. So on this road to war, I think we're seeing again more chess pieces put onto the board and being moved into position for something that looks like it's going to expand way, way further than just the Middle East at some point. And yeah, that would be a world war. So if Japan's rearming itself, if Europe's rearming itself, and they're putting real money down for this, it could get serious.
Yes. Well, I don't know.
One more thing as well. Actually, a lot of the EU budget is going towards digital technologies. So I think they're also, in the guise of defense, actually building out the surveillance state drones, AI, data centers. That's actually all a part of the military budget too. So it's just worth noting.
Control. Yeah, and I guess that adds into, I found this whatever article, it's like some neocon policy, whatever. But the article, it's Christopher A. Williams, The Coming War in America, just from a week ago. And it's like, oh, we're under threat, right? Political violence. And basically, he doesn't say it outright, but basically you can read between the lines. It's like, we need to make policies and plans. It's like, basically, it's like you need to just give the government more power, make a police state, right? Like a Patriot Act to protect us from all of these boogeyman, which is exactly what the Europeans are doing and everyone else. It's like, oh, the Russians are going to get us. Let's build out a technological police state, And so it's the same formula they use, and it's working with the idiot lemmings around us. So
the two things. You're reminding me of a show that I've been watching on Apple, Slow Horses. It's like a British, it's like MI5's rejects are in their own house. It's supposedly a real place. But this season, which I hate, is the super right-wing people, Haiti racist people, and then the super left-wing people, like environmental terrorists or whatever. And I'm laughing. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so ham-handed to show exactly how they get us at each other's throats, and to see how, like, whatever your perspective, whichever silo you identify with, the other side, it's very clear with the ICE thing too. The other side is so wrong. Yes, our side maybe went too far in this or that, but the other side is really, really wrong, And there's just enough of like good people or pretty good people on both sides that you can get caught up in it and not not be convinced otherwise. So I definitely, that psyop is just never ending. But I wanted to know if you guys saw, speaking of like using war as an pathway to their surveillance state, that this was not in the U.S. news. It's not in the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, but it was on RT that Kim.com hacked Palantir and found, Kim.com hacked Palantir and proved that Palantir helps Ukraine target Russia, which I don't even think was news.
No, it wasn't that he didn't hack Palantir, that he heard from someone who supposedly
right. Okay.
hacked it.
I thought, I read two different articles that said that, but that it had conflicting information. Yes, according to Kim.com is the RT article. Yeah.
Well, I quote tweeted that, and my thought was, I'm trying to find it. It's disappeared off of his feed, or he posts so much, but you really couldn't confirm or deny it. So this is the thing that I
Yeah.
don't like, where you're just taking him at his word, and then how many times have we seen these people? Pepe Escobar, Russia knocked down Israeli jet that was carrying nukes.
Totally, yeah.
Viet-
RT, when I see it on RT and not anywhere else, I do wonder. But let me see if I can find the one.
There was when I read it, there was just too much there. It said, "Oh, it's like they confirmed 50 different things, the 50 conspiracies." And I'm like, I doubt it, not that
Yeah.
much. You know,
And
they
it
were
wasn't
saying, "Oh,
news, which was interesting. Like, it was no news to me. Like, what was the shocking revelation?
Well, here it is. He says, I found something interesting. He says, breaking: Palantir was allegedly hacked. An AI agent was used to gain super access, and hackers found that Thiel and Karp committed mass surveillance of world leaders and titans. And so, it's hard. But and then the response he tweets from Palantir, and I think again, it's hard. You can't confirm it. It says
But
Palantir.
Palantir responded?
CTO of Palantir responds, and he says, "This is peakkim.com. Nuclear grade claims, zero evidence, maximum trust me bro energy, and the side of any day now copium. You're chosen as a trusted partner for this dump to Russia, China. The guy who predicted Hillary's arrest, Seth Rich leaks, and Mueller's downfall, batting .0 on credibility."
But it's definitely true that Palantir is helping Ukraine, or the U.S. government, which is Palantir, is helping Ukraine target Russia. I just thought it was weird that, but maybe it's just not reported because it's not true. But it's not that the hacking thing isn't true, but the reality is true.
I'm more interested in the CTO tweeting like, "Yo, bro, this sucks. Shouldn't be doing that." I got an email from Substack recently. They were hacked, and they stole all the emails, and they ended up on the dark web. And the guy who, I think it was the CEO, he sent an email out and he said, "Sorry, guys, this sucks. We'll do better." I'm like, what kind of a way of telling me that you've just destroyed my privacy and got my email on the dark web is that? Sorry, guys, this really sucks.
Yeah,
It's
I
so
take
unprofessional.
accountability, but
Well,
it's like
so
it's so narcissistic.
They never even left a remedy. Like, this is what you should do. Here's how you can fix
Right.
it. It was just like a 10-line email, and everyone was just like, "Thanks for that, guys."
So
Cheers, Substack.
a few
Wait,
weeks before that, it's funny. So that hack, it's because Discord got hacked in October, Substack got hacked in October last year, and who knows how many else. And then a few weeks before Substack admitted, someone was trying to enter into my Substack account. And they couldn't because I've got many layers of security. They would have to also have access to my email, which itself has multiple layers of security. So even if you have my password, you can't get in. And so someone,
Yeah, but they were hacked months before they told us. It was like 4 months before, and they only just told us now.
right?
So
But
our
I
emails
found,
have been circulating on the dark web for a long time.
but I got kind of nervous when I got an email. Someone had used my email to try and log in to Substack, but they need further layers to get in. So that kind of was like, what the hell is going on? And so, anyways, it's just kind of it's. But that kind of proves to your point. We don't doubt that Palantir does have its AI. It is the whole Epstein affair. They're surveilling so many people, not just world leaders. I'm sure if they wanted to us, they're probably they have to expend more energy to track. Anytime they want to track people, then you need to expound more energy, right? To if I want to go look at Parallel Mike, well, the Pegasus stuff, they charge people by the quantity, like by the person that you want to go after, and it's not cheap. So it's not as simple as some people on media say, "Oh, they got backdoors and they're watching us." It's like, I mean, yes and no, right? They actually have to have someone go through the process of getting into your particular phone, and it's time and money. But yeah. So, any other thoughts? I'm pretty much all out of topics. If anyone's got anything else.
I did. Well, why don't we just touch on the Nancy Guthrie thing? Not because I'm following the Nancy Guthrie thing, but I think you had something on it, and then I just wanted to recall a story from an episode of Cognitive Dissidents from a year ago that I thought was much more interesting and important, and hits the same points as Nancy Guthrie, but got no media attention whatsoever. But didn't you have one on Nancy Guthrie?
Yeah, I'll just say I wouldn't even play the CNN clip, but I think most people understand by now. Dan Dix, who does great work, he did an 8-minute video on this, and he's just like, "Look, we don't have." I think they want us wasting so many every week. They give
Totally,
us
yeah.
they give us a Nancy Guthrie, a this or that. There was some trans man, a man dressed as a woman. Something happened. I'm like, I'm not paying attention to that. You're not getting my energy on that. And there was a story this week about Meta. I mean, this is the craziest thing from Reclaim the Net. I'm about to publish today my weekly analysis, and one of the stories was there was a memo from Meta where they actually said, we're going to wait for some civil event as a distraction to implement our facial biometric recognition technology. This is their
Whoa.
method of to their madness. They actually
Yeah.
said that, Meta, so people will be,
Yeah.
their time will be consumed with the latest rage bait while we pass this totalitarian surveillance thing. And then the thing with Guthrie is like, it's simple. It was a false flag. I don't even need to know. I don't know the details. I need to know the details about this old lady, whatever.
I assume the old lady died and they launched the psyop.
I got no idea.
In on it. Yeah, but
Super Bowl. I didn't even watch I didn't even know there was a Super Bowl, but there was like Amazon Ring ads. It's like that. That's all I need to know. It was a false flag to sell you on Amazon Ring and Google Nest, and then supposedly she didn't even have the subscription to record, but somehow Google was able to magically go in and they have a recording. And what do you know? Having Amazon Ring and Google Nest is going to keep us safe, and we can find Nancy. And it's like, wow, we should all have this,
But it just shows you how manufactured it is, because a couple of years ago, a woman named Heidi Plank, who had the laptop and was an accountant, like an assistant accountant to this guy, Jason Sugarman, who was a Hunter Biden associate who was convicted in a crime a fraud crime. A lot of people went to jail. Hunter Biden was definitely implicated, totally covered up on that score. Now he's been pardoned by his father, so it's never going to come to anything. And this guy was involved in yet another fraud being investigated, and Heidi Plank had the goods in her laptop, and she just disappeared at halftime at her little son's football game. Disappeared. They make all sorts of stories up about how she got killed, whatever. But 2 days, or the morning after the morning, so maybe 36 hours later, this guy Sugarman showed up at her door with like a box of muffins, sniffing around, probably looking for her laptop, trying to get into her house. I don't know. And that was completely caught on the Ring camera, immediately released. They could have looked for this woman. It had a nationwide search, just like the Guthrie thing. But no, there was nothing. And this woman's murder is still unsolved. They've slandered her. And I feel like these people never get like a real victim, never gets any attention, never gets any justice. Nobody cares. If the media doesn't pay attention to it. And Savannah Guthrie was instrumental in a psyop against Trump that really helped undermine. I won't get into the details. Maybe I'll do a little newsflash on this separately, but really undermined the investigation into Trump election problems in like fraud or whatever in Georgia. And I'm going to explain that in a separate episode. But I'm still mad at Savannah Guthrie for what she did to the MAGA hat kids. And Trump is calling her up. He's worried about it. Whereas a Biden associate was a person of interest in a murder. And, you could have used that for the Ring camera or tried to solve it. But, it just shows that there's like real things going on back there. But what the media chooses to focus on can really obscure real facts, real connections. And it also demonstrates that these relationships, these hatreds, Trump's animosity towards people, it's all an act.
And I'll just add one more thing, which on all of this is kind of freaky. The Berggruen Institute, again, this is a guy who wants to replace Trilateral and Bilderberg, Nicholas Berggruen. And I follow his Noema magazine. They publish a weekly article. And this week's was a must read because they're talking about Chinese convergence of East and West, China. And where there is connectivity, there is surveillance. So he's basically saying that, COVID was the pretext for China to bring in the technocracy. And now the migration ICE stuff is the pretext for America to be Chinafied and whip out the oligocracy. I said this 6 years ago, literally. And then, but the interesting thing is, where that comes in with the Amazon ring. So he's writing is, during COVID, China applied this, state surveillance abetted by new technologies in the name of public health. Citizens were assigned color codes and access requirements that determined where they could and could not go, enforced by cameras outside people's homes. This is in China during COVID, divided into neighborhood grids for continuous monitoring of movements. Cross-referencing network connectivity allowed unprecedented data aggregation that put it all together with travel history, online shopping patterns, cell phone use, and ID numbers. Now imagine, he's talking about China and COVID. Now, put that in America, where everyone's got Amazon rings, Google Nest, whatever, all that stuff, and they declare any state of emergency, and you can't leave your home because all of your neighbors have Amazon, cameras, and they'll know when you leave, and then you'll
That
get
was happening out here during COVID.
So
people were afraid that their neighbors would narc on them.
But this is frightening because now, they're building out the technological means with which to actually this time, like for real, keep you in your home. They'll send the police, they'll have drones with poison darts. I don't know.
This was one of the things about the stablecoin and interoperability and all of that, that if all the information gets aggregated, they can tell things like your phone isn't where you say it is, or, you were in an Uber at a certain time. And then, when you think there are a lot of little things that you have to fudge because the laws in the system are so oppressive. And if you are really under such lock and key that every single one of the millions of laws are actually enforced instantaneously, you would really be hamstrung. You would have to just jack in to your favorite video game and check out.
Yeah, I think that's the goal. And I've been told by a lot of people that they're just building out infrastructure everywhere in places like the UK. There's cameras going up, these black poles. So it's not a street light, it's some kind of system they're installing, that there's roadworks everywhere because they're digging up all of the streets and putting cables in. So it does feel like we are moving towards it really quickly. Like even getting out of a city now or into a city, there's always like a central entry point where it's camered up. So they'd know, oh, you've gone outside of the city. Like we can see your car, it's number plate recognition. Then add in the facial recognition and the biometrics, and it's kind of scary. Like how they can do this under people's noses. We're so close. And but I think the currency one's the worst, the stable coin, the digital coins, because like you said, Monica, once that's in play, everybody has to spend. You have to put fuel in the car. You have to buy food. There's very few people, I don't know anyone who can live without any transactions at all. It's pretty much impossible. So yeah, that's the one that'll really get people. And the cashless thing, like, can they truly go cashless whilst there's so many old people and people that can't use the tech? I don't know. Maybe in the right crisis, you could get away with it.
They'll just force it. They don't care. And, I still can't understand the people. I have guests on who don't seem concerned, who are not freaking out. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, literally, we're standing on the tracks, we're having a coffee, and there's a train coming. And it's like, I'm like, there's a train coming. It's like that scene from Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom with that blonde girl, and she's got to stick her hand, to pull the lever, and there's all a bunch of insects and spiders and scorpions, and he's like, we are going to die if you don't pull that lever. Like, we are going.
But where is the lever? What lever can we pull?
Yeah.
That's
Tell
my.
me what the lever
I'll
is.
pull the lever.
But I think that's what we're trying to figure out here. That we're brainstorming. Like, where's the lever? I don't know where it is. But if we don't pull it soon, we're going to die. Meanwhile, there's people like, you're crazy, man. Everything's fine.
Yeah, as they proudly show you their phone with the Ring doorbell screen showing you, oh, look, I can look at my house and I'm not there. And I'm like, that's not good.
I mean, and to your
Yeah.
point, like now, I don't know how it is in other parts of the world, but here in Mexico, they forced you to have geolocations. When I log into my bank app, it like, you have to have geolocation, you log in, and then they treat it like it's permission to access your own money. We need this, we need that, and so it's not good. It's not good. We're screwed, basically. This trajectory that we're heading on, we are screwed. But we have to keep throwing tomatoes at the system and putting spokes in the wheels. And eventually there's that famous recording from decades ago. I forget who it was. I think it was some leftist throwing yourself on the gears of the machine, right? So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, get yourself a plot of land and grow some potatoes. You're gonna need them. It's a potato economy for us guys.
Chickens and
I've heard people question the economy of growing potatoes. Any thoughts on that?
so
Well,
nutritious.
the Irish survived on those damn things.
Yeah,
So.
potatoes and chickens. I love chickens because they can continue to make animal protein out of basically garbage, and you don't have to kill them for a while, and then you can make a stock out of them when they give their lives. Ultimately, a goat for milk. I just like the idea of things that you don't have to kill to get animal protein made from like grass and seeds and stuff you can't eat.
Yeah, where I live, there's an abundance of like small time farmers who are elderly and still living like they've always lived. So you can buy goat's milk, cheese, butters, but there's no young people to follow them up. So all the young people have left, and that means you're just going to have this cliff edge in the next 10, 15 years where all of these small homesteads and farms disappear because there's no one to manage them. So that's pretty scary because for me as a small time farmer, that's kind of your insurance policies. Like I can't grow all this stuff myself. I can't produce everything I need. But my neighbors, I can walk to and buy the stuff. But once they've gone, you're gonna have to do it all yourself if you want. And that's
And the
impossible.
wisdom.
You need a community.
The heirloom wisdom of that kind of stuff. You lose how, herbs and medicines and how to grow a certain thing. Some of those things that they've been growing for centuries in the same spot, those are genetically suited to the spot. You only grow from the seeds of the thing that flourished in that exact spot. Like it's really a loss.
And I mean,
Yeah, we've got some of those trees in our garden, some apple trees, and you can't even buy those types of. I mean, they're only apples, but they'll have heirloom varieties, and you can't find them anymore because people have stopped propagating them. So yeah, there'll be a lot of wisdom loss and a lot of the old varieties
Variety,
lost. And
yeah, which matters. Variety matters, and climates change. Really, like in nature, you need varieties for that reason. That's why they exist.
but I mean, Soylent Green is what they want. Collapse Life. I consider them my fellow comrades in arms. Collapse Life. They just did an article and interview. I haven't seen the interview yet, but talking about how the math isn't mathing on agriculture farming in America anymore. And I think all of this is in purpose to bring in the monopoly. They're going to own, as we said earlier, own everything: the means of transport, compute, food. Mercosur EU deal is to destroy farming in Europe, so you have to do whatever Brussels says to get fed your Soylent Green now. In Canada, they're bringing in genetically modified pork, which isn't even going to be labeled. And what was my other points? The famous Croatian actor Goran Višnjić. I just saw a clip this morning of him in Croatian saying that he's trying to rally people to the capital in Zagreb because in Croatia now they're bringing in these huge conglomerates, chickens. So they're going to be farming just endless amount of chickens, and it's going to destroy. We're not going to get anything in Croatia. It's going to kill the small businesses, competition. It's going to completely pollute pristine Croatia, the water, the nature, and all of those profits are going to go to these globalists. So they're just using Croatia to do all this insane amount of farming, the amount of water it's going to take, and then we're just going to be left with literally the crap, literally, and then they take all the money out. We don't get anything, and so they're just using us like as a invasion, like as a parasite, a host would. So
that's pretty much it. That's why the heading. There is I still think we always have to just caveat that there's still a long way to go. And the more people that become at least somewhat self-reliant and independent, the less likely it is that they snuff it all out and there's nowhere to go. So definitely not hopeless, but you do have to take action. And for a lot of people, it's radical action. It requires you to step outside of the mainstream. And let's face it, most people are comfortable. They like their comfortable little Ring doorbells and the Dash food or whatever the hell it is. I don't know. We don't have Dash families.
I'm sure you don't.
I know there's those kind of things in the cities. So yeah, people like it. And that's the obstacle, is people's comfort. It's comfortable to be a slouch with technocracy.
Well, I'm, and just on the positive note, I'm just here for the moment when, hopefully, when something breaks, right? When in this battle with them, the other side, what's the military strategy terms? When something breaks and we've gotten in, and we can move in or help them when they've fallen on their own sword. And so, as much as Alex Jones is a deep state globalist operator today, but he used to say things like resistance is victory. And I do believe that. I think just to act, what Patrick Wood, he said on the recent podcast after we hit stop recording, he said something to the tune of, it's not about winning. It's about doing what is right, regardless of the odds. Resisting tyranny, doing good. Forget about the odds. So that it kind of does embody that resistance is victory type of thing. So.
Yeah, and it's a non-materialistic view as well, because if you live with just materialism as an atheist, then of course all that matters is luxury and surviving for as long as you can and clinging on to life. But without that, it's like, yeah, you're all going to die anyway, so have dignity and stand up and make your life meaningful, which doesn't come from allowing them to dominate us, the people that want to install these systems. And I actually think that the majority of people that operate these structures of power don't want that. It's just that the hierarchical structure enables them to co-opt everyone and get them to go along with it. But if you laid out what's happening to most rational people, they would say, hell no, I don't want that, and I wouldn't want to take part in it. So there's always hope. There's always hope that it fails. It's just, in failure, it will probably be pretty nasty too. So
it's probably going to take a while.
Yeah. Having a food supply chain fail isn't a good place to be.
Right. Well, I guess we go out on that high note.
I'm going to plant olives in my olive trees in my when we're finished here. So I'm going to add olives to my vines. I feel like pressing olive oil is probably a good thing to contribute into the post-apocalyptic.
You've been reading Revelation. It says that everyone's going to starve save for the wine and the oil. So
no way.
That's what it says.
You've got
wine, you've got oil, you're going to be fine. You're one of the chosen few.
I was just inspired to do it, actually. And I think there's another passage that says it's the good wife who tends the vines. Something like that.
All right.
That's a little more cheerful note. There you go.
Revelation, cheerful note.
Stop.
I'm getting hungry.
Stop.
No, it is cheerful from the Christian perspective, actually. But
the sooner the better.
You're talking about my dinner: salad with doused in olive oil and wine glass on the side. So I'm getting hungry. I haven't had lunch. Intermittent fasting. It's late afternoon here.
It's a day of fast and abstinence. It's Ash Wednesday.
There you go. All right. Well, I guess you guys, we can all plug whatever we want. I guess myself signing off. Hrvoje from Geopolitics and Empire.
I'm Mike, the foreboding of Revelation. You can find me over on Substack and the Parallel Systems.
And this is Monica from the Monica Perez Show on Substack, Twitter, monicaperezshow.com, and wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts.